When he wanted a bit of fun, he waited till they were within a reasonable distance of London, and then he would race up to town and pick up a girl at the Globe restaurant. Of course, it was expensive, and when you came to think of it, it wasn't really worth the money. Besides, he played a lot of cricket in Benson's company, and golf when he got the chance, and that sort of thing was rotten for the eye. Julia told a thumping lie. Jimmy always says I'd be a much better actress if I had an affair. Don't you believe it. He's just a dirty old man. With him, I suppose. I mean, you might just as well say that I'd give a better performance of Marchbanks if I wrote poetry. They talked so much together that it was inevitable for her at last to learn his views on marriage. I think an actor's a perfect fool to marry young. There are so many cases in which it absolutely ruins a chap's career, especially if he marries an actress. He becomes a star, and then she's a millstone around his neck. She insists on playing with him, and if he's in management, he has to give her leading parts, and if he engages someone else, there are most frightful scenes. And of course, for an actress, it's insane. There's always the chance of her having a baby, and she may have to refuse a damned good part. She's out of the public eye for months. And you know what the public is. Unless they see you all the time, they forget that you ever existed. Marriage! What did she care about marriage? Her heart melted within her when she looked into his deep, friendly eyes, and she shivered with delightful anguish when she considered his shining russet hair. There was nothing that he could have asked her that she would not gladly have given him. The thought never entered his lovely head. Of course he likes me, she said to herself. He likes me better than anyone. He even admires me. But I don't attract him that way. She did everything to seduce him except slip into bed with him, and she only did not do that because there was no opportunity. She began to fear that they knew one another too well for it to seem possible that their relations should change, and she reproached herself bitterly because she had not rushed to a climax when first they came in contact with one another. He had too sincere an affection for her now ever to become her lover. She found out when his birthday was, and gave him a gold cigarette case, which she knew was the thing he wanted more than anything in the world. It cost a good deal more than she could afford, and he smilingly reproached her for her extravagance. He never dreamt what ecstatic pleasure it gave her to spend her money on him. When her birthday came along, he gave her 6 pairs of silk stockings. She noticed at once that they were not of very good quality. Poor lamb, he had not been able to bring himself to spring to that, but she was so touched that he should give her anything that she could not help crying. "What an emotional little thing you are," he said, but he was pleased and touched to see her tears. She found his thrift rather an engaging trait. He could not bear to throw his money about. He was not exactly mean, but he was not generous. Once or twice at restaurants he thought he under-tipped the waiter, but he paid no attention to her when she ventured to remonstrate. He gave the exact 10%, and when he could not make the exact sum to a penny, asked the waiter for change. "Neither a borrower nor a lender be," he quoted from Polonius. When some member of the company, momentarily hard up, tried to borrow from him, it was in vain, but he refused so frankly, with so much heartiness, that he did not affront. "My dear old boy, I'd love to lend you a quid, but I'm absolutely stony. I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent at the end of the week." For some months, Michael was so much occupied with his own parts that he failed to notice how good an actress Julia was. Of course he read the reviews and their praise of Julia, but he read summarily, without paying much attention till he came to the remarks the critics made about him. He was pleased by their approval, but not cast down by their censure. He was too modest to resent an unfavorable criticism. "I suppose I was rotten," he would say ingeniously. His most engaging trait was his good humor. He bore Jimmy Langton's abuse with equanimity. When tempers grew frayed during a long rehearsal, he remained serene. It was impossible to quarrel with him. One day he was sitting in front watching the rehearsal of an act in which he did not appear. It ended with a powerful and moving scene in which Julia had the opportunity to give a fine display of acting. When the stage was being set for the next act, Julia came through the pass door, and sat down beside Michael. He did not speak to her, but looked sternly in front of him. She threw him a surprised look. It was unlike him not to give her a smile and a friendly word. Then she saw that he was clenching his jaw to prevent its trembling, and that his eyes were heavy with tears. "What's the matter, darling?" "Don't talk to me, you dirty little bitch. You've made me cry." "Angel!" The tears came to her own eyes and streamed down her face. She was so pleased, so flattered. "Oh, damn it," he sobbed. "I can't help it." He took a handkerchief out of his pocket and dried his eyes. "I love him, I love him, I love him." Presently he blew his nose. "I'm beginning to feel better now. But my God, you shattered me. It's not a bad scene, is it? Scene be damned, it was you. You just wrung my heart. The critics were right, damn it. You're an actress, and no mistake. Have you only just discovered it? I knew you were pretty good, but I never knew you were as good as all that. You make the rest of us look like a piece of cheese. You're going to be the star. Nothing can stop you. Well then, you shall be my leading man." Fat chance I'd have of that with a London manager. Julia had an inspiration. "Then you must go into management yourself, and make me your leading lady." He paused. He was not a quick thinker, and needed a little time to let a notion sink into his head. He smiled. "You know, that's not half a bad idea." They talked it over at luncheon. Julia did most of the talking while he listened to her with absorbed interest. "Of course, the only way to get decent parts consistently is to run one's own theater," he said. "I know that." The money was the difficulty. They discussed how much was the least they could start on. Michael thought £5,000 was the minimum, but how in heaven's name could they raise a sum like that? Of course, some of those middle-pool manufacturers were rolling in money, but you could hardly expect them to fork out £5,000 to start a couple of young actors who had only a local reputation. Besides, they were jealous of London. "You'll have to find your rich old woman," said Julia gaily. She only half believed all she had been saying, but it excited her to discuss a plan that would bring her into a close and constant relation with Michael. But he was being very serious. "I don't believe one could hope to make a success in London unless one were pretty well known already. The thing to do would be to act there in other managements for 3 or 4 years first. One's got to know the ropes. And the advantage of that would be that one would have had time to read plays. It would be madness to start in management unless one had at least 3 plays. One of them out to be a winner. Of course, if one did that, one ought to make a point of acting together, so that the public got accustomed to seeing the 2 names on the same bill. I don't know that there's much in that. The great thing is to have good, strong parts. There's no doubt in my mind that it would be much easier to find backers if one had made a bit of a reputation in London."